When 9-year-old Maya Castillo sat down behind her mom's gym and started crying, she had no idea her mom was about to find out the truth. Maya's mom wasn't just any mom. She was Selena Castillo, a UFC champion who once held a real title belt over her head in front of thousands of fans. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was her daughter, crying alone behind a cold brick wall, holding a notebook against her chest, like she was trying to protect it from the whole world. Selena knelt down and asked the only question that mattered. What happened? But Maya wouldn't answer. She just whispered one strange thing. If I say it, it'll be true. 3 weeks earlier, Maya had walked into a brand new school for the very first time. She didn't know yet that a girl named Brooklyn was about to make her life harder than she ever imagined. It started small, a joke about a hoodie, a torn page in a notebook, a note folded into a tiny square. But there was one line in that note, one sentence Maya was too scared to even say out loud, and it was about to change everything. Watch the whole video to find out exactly what that note said and what Selena Castillo did next that nobody saw coming. The gym was quiet. Outside, behind the building, a girl was crying. Maya Castillo sat with her knees pulled up to her chest, her back pressed against the cold brick wall. The afternoon sun had already slipped behind the mountains, and the air was starting to turn chilly the way it does in early spring in Colorado. Her notebook was crushed against her stomach like she was trying to hide it from the whole world. She did not want anyone to find her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A dumpster sat a few feet away, and next to it, a stack of old tires Selena used for training drills. Maya had picked this spot on purpose. It was the one corner of the gym parking lot that nobody could see from the street, and nobody could see from the big front windows either. She had checked, more than once, just to be sure. But someone did find her. Maya, Selena Castillo stepped around the corner of the building. She was still wearing her workout clothes, sweat on her shoulders from training a class inside. Her dark hair was pulled back tight in a bun, a few loose strands sticking to her forehead. Her hands were rough and strong, the hands of a woman who had once been the toughest fighter in the world. Those hands had once lifted a championship belt over her head in front of 20,000 screaming fans, back before Maya was even old enough to remember it clearly. But right now, those hands were shaking a little because her daughter was crying, and she did not know why. "Baby, what happened?" Selena knelt down in front of her, ignoring the cold concrete under her knees. "Talk to me." Maya shook her head. Tears ran down her cheeks and dripped onto her notebook, leaving small dark spots on the cover, right over the drawing of a dragon she had made weeks ago. "Did someone hurt you?" Selena asked. Her voice stayed calm, the same calm voice she used to use right before stepping into the cage. But her eyes were not calm at all. They were scanning Maya's arms, her face, looking for any mark, any bruise, anything she could understand and fix right away. Maya still didn't answer. She just held the notebook tighter, the way a much younger child might hold a stuffed animal. "Maya, please, you're scaring me. I don't want to say it," Maya whispered, so quiet that Selena had to lean in close to hear her, over the wind moving through the pine trees behind the gym. "If I say it, it'll be true." Selena did not know what that meant. Not yet. She sat down on the cold ground next to her daughter, not caring that her workout pants were getting damp from the gravel, and wrapped one strong arm around Maya's shoulders. She didn't ask any more questions for a moment. She had learned, over years of training young fighters, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do for someone who was hurting was simply to sit beside them and wait, letting the quiet do some of the work that words couldn't. Inside the gym, the sound of weights clanging and sneakers squeaking on the mats went on without them, like the whole world hadn't noticed that something important was happening just outside the back wall. A car passed on the road out front. Somewhere far off, a dog barked twice and then went quiet again. Selena would find out what was wrong. She always did, eventually. But first, this story needs to go back. Back 3 weeks, to the very first morning Maya Castillo walked through the front doors of a brand new school, in a brand new town, not knowing yet that a girl named Brooklyn Hayes was about to change everything. What had Brooklyn said, written, or done that finally broke through all of Maya's quiet strength? That answer would not come until much later. For now, all anyone knew was this. Somewhere between that first nervous morning and this cold, quiet evening behind the gym, Something had happened that hurt 9-year-old Maya Castillo more than anything ever had before. 3 weeks earlier, Maya Castillo stood in front of Cedar Hollow Elementary School, holding her mother's hand a little too tight. The Castillo family had just moved to Cedar Hollow, a small town with tall pine trees and a view of the Rocky Mountains in the distance. The town had one main street, one small grocery store, and a single blinking traffic light that everyone joked about. Maya had only been to Cedar Hollow twice before they moved, both times just to look at houses, and the whole town had still felt like a place borrowed from a postcard rather than somewhere she actually lived. Selena had bought an old gym on that same main street and turned it into a fighting and fitness center called Castillo Fighting Fitness. She had retired from professional fighting 2 years before, after winning a championship belt that still hung, polished and golden, on the gym's office wall. Now she trained other fighters and ran kids' self-defense classes on weekends, and the gym had quickly become the busiest building on the whole street. But none of that mattered to Maya right now. All that mattered was the big brick building in front of her, full of kids she had never met, and one giant glass door that felt heavier than it looked. "You're going to be great," Selena said, crouching down to Maya's height so they were eye to eye. "You know that?" "What if nobody likes me?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then they don't know what they're missing." Selena tapped Maya's notebook, the one she carried everywhere, full of drawings of dragons and space cats and tiny imaginary towns. "You've got more good stuff in here than most people have in their whole brain. Anybody smart enough to notice that is going to want to be your friend." Maya almost smiled. Her older brother, Tyler, who was 12, rolled his eyes in a friendly way as he adjusted his backpack straps. "It's 4th grade. Not the octagon, Maya. Nobody's going to choke you out over a pencil case." "Tyler," Selena warned, but she was smiling too, the worry lines around her eyes softening for just a second. "I'm serious," Tyler added, nudging Maya's shoulder gently. "You're gonna be fine. You're at Castillo. We don't scare easy." Maya walked inside, the heavy door swinging shut behind her with a soft thud that seemed to echo louder than it should have. The hallways smelled like fresh paint and floor wax. Colorful paper letters spelled welcome above the front office. Maya found her classroom, room 14, and stood frozen in the doorway for a second before stepping in. Her teacher, Ms. Reyes, welcomed her warmly. She had kind brown eyes and a poster on the wall behind her desk that said, "Be the kind of person you would want as a friend." She gave Maya a desk near the window where the morning light came in soft and gold. "Class, this is Maya," Ms. Reyes said. "She just moved here from Denver. Let's make her feel welcome." A few kids waved. One boy near the back said hi, so quietly Maya almost didn't hear it. For the first hour, things felt okay. Maya drew a small dragon in the corner of her notebook. The dragon's wings spread wide over a tiny castle, and felt a little less scared than she had 10 minutes before. Then it was time for recess. The playground was bigger than the one at Maya's old school, with a tall wooden climbing structure, 2 sets of swings, and a wide grassy field where some older kids were already kicking a soccer ball around. There was also a row of painted hopscotch squares near the fence, faded from years of sneakers and rain, and a teacher on duty standing near the slide with a coffee cup in one hand. Maya wasn't sure where to go, so she found an empty bench near the edge of the playground and sat down, opening her notebook to feel a little less alone. That was when she first noticed a girl named Brooklyn Hayes, standing near the swings with 2 other girls, watching her with sharp eyes. Brooklyn didn't come over right away. She just watched, the way someone watches a new animal they aren't sure about yet, deciding whether it's interesting or whether it's something to be afraid of, or something to push around. Maya didn't know it yet, but that look would follow her for weeks. When the bell rang to go back inside, Brooklyn walked past Maya's bench, close enough that her shoulder almost bumped Maya's notebook off her lap. "Sorry," Brooklyn said, not sounding sorry at all, and kept walking, laughing with her friends about something Maya couldn't hear. Maya picked up her notebook, brushed off the dirt, and told herself it was nothing, just an accident, just a new school being a little strange, the way new places always feel strange at first, full of unfamiliar faces and rules she hadn't learned yet. She had no way of knowing that it had not been an accident at all. Brooklyn Hayes was the kind of kid who walked into a room like she already owned it. She was tall for 10 years old, with a loud laugh that other kids either loved or feared, depending on what side of it they were standing on. She had been the most popular kid in 4th grade since kindergarten, and she liked it that way. Teachers often described her as a natural leader, which was true, except nobody had taught her yet what to do with that kind of power. She was the first one picked for every team at recess, the first one whose birthday party everyone wanted an invitation to, and the one whose opinion seemed to decide, almost instantly, whether something was cool or whether it was something to laugh at. At recess the next day, Brooklyn watched Maya sit alone on a bench, drawing in her notebook. Ashley and Priya stood near the swing set, waiting, the way they always waited, to see which direction Brooklyn would decide to walk. "New girl," Brooklyn said, walking over with her friends trailing behind her like she was a parade. "What's that?" "Just drawings," Maya said quietly, instinctively curling one arm protectively over the page. Brooklyn leaned in anyway and looked over Maya's shoulder at the dragon picture. "That's weird. Why would you draw a dragon with glasses?" "Because he likes to read," Maya said. "He's the librarian of his kingdom." One of Brooklyn's friends, a girl named Ashley, laughed. Not because it was funny, but because Brooklyn was the one who decided what was funny. And Ashley had learned a long time ago to laugh whenever Brooklyn looked like she wanted someone to. "You're weird," Brooklyn said, but she said it smiling, like it was a joke between friends. Maya didn't know yet that it wasn't a joke at all. "My mom said you moved here because your mom's some kind of fighter," Brooklyn went on, sitting down on the bench without being asked. "Is that true? She used to fight in the UFC," Maya said, a little proud despite herself, sitting up a bit straighter. "She was a champion. She has a real belt and everything, with her name on it." Brooklyn's eyebrows went up. For 1 second, Maya thought maybe Brooklyn was impressed. She was wrong. "So that's why you think you're special," Brooklyn said, her voice shifting just slightly, the friendliness draining out of it like water out of a cracked cup. "Because your mom can punch people." "I don't think I'm special," Maya said softly, shrinking back a little. "Good," Brooklyn said. "Because you're not." She stood up, brushing off her jeans, and looked down at Maya with an expression that was hard for a 9-year-old to read, but easy for an adult to recognize. The look of someone testing how far they could push before anyone pushed back. Maya kept her eyes on her notebook, on the half-finished dragon, hoping that if she didn't look up, the moment would simply pass by on its own, the way a cloud passes over the sun and then moves along. Nobody pushed back. Maya stayed quiet, hoping that quiet would make Brooklyn lose interest and walk away. It worked, for the moment. Brooklyn walked away, laughing with her friends, already talking about something else entirely, the way kids her age could shift moods in seconds. But Maya sat very still on the bench, holding her notebook against her chest like a shield, replaying the conversation in her head, wondering what she had done wrong, wondering why being quiet hadn't been enough to keep her safe. She watched Brooklyn cross the playground toward the swings, watched the way other kids seemed to lean toward her without even meaning to, the way plants lean toward a window. It made Maya feel even smaller than before, sitting there alone on her bench while the rest of the playground buzzed on without her. It was such a small thing, really, just a few sentences on a playground bench, but it was the first stone thrown, and Maya could feel, somewhere deep down, that more were coming. That night at dinner, the kitchen smelled like garlic and warm tortillas, and the radio on the counter played music low in the background, the way it always did when Selena cooked. Tyler asked how her first day went. "It was okay," Maya said, pushing rice around her plate with her fork. "There's a girl named Brooklyn. She's kind of popular." "Is she nice?" Selena asked, passing the salad across the table. Maya thought about the dragon comment, the bumped notebook. The word weird, said with a smile that didn't quite reach Brooklyn's eyes. She thought about saying all of it out loud, right then, at the table, with the radio playing and her family looking at her, waiting. "She's interesting," Maya said instead, which wasn't a lie, exactly. It just wasn't the whole truth either. Selena nodded, satisfied, and reached over to refill Tyler's water glass, not knowing yet that her daughter had just learned how to hide something for the very first time, and that it would not be the last time before the year was through. By the second week, Maya had learned the worst seat in the cafeteria, the one closest to Brooklyn's table. She had also learned to sit far away from it, choosing a spot near the recycling bins where almost nobody else wanted to sit, which suited Maya just fine. It was quiet there. The smell of old cardboard and rinsed-out milk cartons wasn't pleasant, exactly, but it was peaceful, and peaceful had started to feel like the most important thing in the world. She could eat her sandwich and read or draw without anyone bothering her, watching the rest of the cafeteria from a safe distance, the way someone watches weather roll in from far away. But Brooklyn had a way of finding her anyway. "Why do you always eat alone?" Brooklyn asked one day, sliding onto the bench across from Maya without being invited, her tray clattering down hard enough to make Maya jump. Her friends, Ashley and a girl named Priya, sat down beside her, already smiling, already waiting to see what Brooklyn would do. "I don't mind it," Maya said, even though she did. The cafeteria felt loud and bright, and eating alone had become less of a choice and more of a habit, the way a person gets used to wearing a coat that's slightly too small because it's the only one they have. "That's sad," Brooklyn said, opening her chocolate milk. "Maybe if you weren't so weird, people would sit with you." "I'm not weird," Maya said, though her voice wavered. "You draw dragons with glasses," Brooklyn said, counting on her fingers like she was building a case in court. "You barely talk. You wear the same hoodie every single day." It was Maya's favorite hoodie. It was gray, soft from being washed dozens of times, with a small embroidered wolf stitched onto the front pocket. Her mom had given it to her the day she won her last fight, 2 years ago, before she retired. A championship win that had made the local news and even a small mention on a sports website. Maya still remembered that night clearly, sitting on her grandmother's couch in Denver, watching her mom's hand get raised in the air on the screen, and then opening a box the very next morning to find the gray hoodie folded neatly inside. A note from her mom tucked into the pocket that said, "You're my champion too." Maya wore it because it made her feel close to her mom, even at school, even when her mom wasn't there. "Maybe your mom can't afford other clothes," Brooklyn said, and Ashley and Priya both laughed, the sound sharp and quick, like a slammed locker door. That one hit harder than the others. Maya felt her face go hot, the way it does right before tears come, even when you're trying hard to stop them. "My mom has plenty of money," Maya said quietly, gripping the edge of the lunch table. "She owns a whole gym, a real business, with employees and everything." "Sure she does," Brooklyn said, not believing her, or maybe not caring whether it was true. "I bet she just got lucky a few times, and people made a big deal out of it. My dad says most of those fighters are basically just lucky." Maya wanted to say something back. She wanted to defend her mother, the strongest, bravest person she knew, the woman who had once fought through a broken finger in the 3rd round and still won the fight. She wanted to list every single thing that made Selena Castillo amazing. The trophies, the interviews, the way strangers sometimes recognized her at the grocery store and asked for a photo. But the words got stuck somewhere between her heart and her mouth, the way important words sometimes do when you're scared, and all that came out was silence. She stared down at her sandwich, her appetite completely gone, wishing she could rewind the last 2 minutes and somehow find the right thing to say before it was too late. "Whatever," Brooklyn said when Maya didn't answer, standing up with her tray. "It's not like it matters anyway." She walked off with Ashley and Priya trailing behind, already laughing about something new, already moving on, the way Brooklyn always seemed to move on so easily while leaving a small mess behind her that someone else had to clean up. Maya sat alone again, the noise of the cafeteria suddenly feeling very far away, like she was underwater and everyone else was up on the surface, talking and laughing in a world she couldn't quite reach. That night, the kitchen was warm and smelled like onions and chicken broth simmering on the stove. Tyler was already at the table doing homework, his pencil tapping against his math book, when Selena asked, "How was school, baby?" while stirring the pot of soup. Maya answered the way she always did now. "Fine. Just fine?" Selena asked, glancing over, a wooden spoon still in her hand. "Yeah, same as always." It was the first real lie. Not the half-truth from before, but a full, clean lie, smooth and quick. The kind that gets a little easier to tell each time you say it. It would not be the last. Selena didn't push. She had learned, over the years, that 9-year-olds sometimes needed space before they were ready to talk. the same way a fighter sometimes needed a quiet corner between rounds before they could explain what was going wrong in the fight. She figured Maya would open up when she was ready, the same way Maya always eventually came around to talking about hard days, usually a day or two later, once she'd had time to sit with her feelings on her own first. She had no idea how long Maya planned on waiting this time, or how much would happen before that waiting finally came to an end. The only place at school where Maya truly felt safe was art class on Thursday afternoons. Mrs. Lin, the art teacher, had bright purple glasses and paint-stained sleeves, and she let the kids draw whatever they wanted during free draw time at the end of class. The room smelled like pencil shavings and tempera paint, and tall windows let in long stripes of afternoon light that fell across the tables. Maya always chose the same thing, a whole imaginary world she called Pine Watch, full of flying foxes with feathered wings, tree cities built into giant glowing trunks, and a brave young queen who looked a little bit like Maya herself. If Maya had been taller and never afraid of anything. She had been building Pine Watch in her notebook for almost a year. It had started as a single drawing of a fox with wings, something she'd sketched on a boring car ride. Over time, it had grown into pages and pages of maps, characters, and tiny handwritten notes about who lived where and why, who ruled which tree city, and which seasons the flying foxes migrated in. It was the most important thing she owned, more important than any toy or game, because it was entirely hers, built one quiet afternoon at a time. One Thursday, Mrs. Lin stepped out of the room to get more paper from the supply closet down the hall. The class got noisy the way classes always do the second a teacher steps out. Brooklyn wandered over to Maya's table, looked down at the open notebook, and went quiet for a moment, studying the page. "Is this your little fantasy world?" Brooklyn asked. "It's called Pine Watch," Maya said, careful, hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, Brooklyn would think it was cool. Maybe this could be the moment things turned around. "It's babyish," Brooklyn said, wrinkling her nose. "Flying foxes? That's something a 5-year-old would draw." "It took me almost a year to make," Maya said, her voice shaking now, the hope draining out of her as fast as it had come. "A year wasted, then," Brooklyn said, and Ashley, sitting nearby, let out a small laugh she quickly tried to hide behind her hand. She picked up the notebook before Maya could stop her, flipping through pages fast and rough, the way someone flips through something they don't respect, not pausing to actually look at any of the careful details Maya had spent so many hours drawing. "Brooklyn, give it back," Maya said, standing up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Relax, I'm just looking." Brooklyn held the notebook over her head, just out of Maya's reach, laughing as Maya jumped for it, her sneakers squeaking against the tile. A page tore, just a small rip at the corner, but it was the Queen of Pine Watch, the character Maya had drawn over and over for months, refining her crown and her cape until they looked exactly right, now torn halfway off the page. The sound of it tearing seemed louder than it should have been, sharp and final, like something breaking that couldn't easily be put back together. The whole table went silent. "Oops," Brooklyn said, tossing the notebook back onto the desk like it was nothing. "It's just paper." It wasn't just paper to Maya. It was a year of quiet afternoons, a whole world she had built when she felt lonely, a place where she got to be brave instead of scared. But she didn't say any of that. She picked up her notebook, pressed the torn page flat with trembling fingers, trying to smooth the rip back together as if that might undo it, and said nothing at all. When Mrs. Lin came back into the room, humming to herself, a fresh stack of paper in her arms, she noticed Maya sitting very still and quiet, her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to take up less space than usual. "Everything okay over here?" Mrs. Lin asked, setting the paper down on the front table. Maya looked at the torn page. She looked at Brooklyn, who was now busy drawing something else entirely, laughing quietly with Ashley, as if nothing had happened at all, as if a whole year of careful work hadn't just been treated like garbage. "Everything's fine," Maya said. It was the third lie, and somehow it was the easiest one yet to say, which scared Maya more than the lie itself. She was starting to learn how to disappear inside her own silence, the way a small animal learns to freeze perfectly still when it senses danger nearby, hoping that if it doesn't move, the danger will simply pass it by without ever noticing it was there at all. That evening, at home, Maya sat at the kitchen table with a roll of clear tape, carefully repairing the torn corner of her queen's page. Outside the window, the sky had turned a dusty orange as the sun dipped behind the mountains, and somewhere down the hall she could hear Tyler's video game music playing softly through his closed door. Her hands were steady, the way they always were when she drew, but her chest felt tight and heavy, like something was sitting on it that she couldn't quite name. She heard her mother's footsteps coming down the hallway and quickly closed the notebook, sliding it under a folder on the table. "What you working on?" Selena asked, peeking into the kitchen, still smelling faintly of the gym, of chalk and rubber mats. "Just homework," Maya said. Another lie. The fourth one now. They were starting to stack up like bricks, one on top of another, building a quiet wall between Maya and the one person who might have been able to help her tear it all back down, brick by brick, before it ever got too tall to climb over. Selena Castillo had spent 10 years reading people's bodies before they even threw a punch. She could tell when an opponent was about to fake left and go right, just from a tiny shift in their hips. She could read a flicker in someone's shoulders a full second before they moved, the kind of skill that had won her fights other people thought she had no business winning. Coaches used to say she could see a punch coming before the other fighter even knew they were going to throw it. She could also tell when her own daughter was hiding something. It wasn't anything she could point to exactly, just a stiffness in the way Maya answered questions lately, a half-second pause before every, "I'm fine," the kind of small hesitation a person learns to listen for after years of watching for the truth hidden underneath someone's words. "You've been quiet," Selena said one evening, sitting on the edge of Maya's bed while Tyler practiced shooting hoops outside the window, his sneakers squeaking against the driveway in a steady, comforting rhythm. The lamp on Maya's nightstand cast a soft yellow glow across the room. "I'm just tired," Maya said, not looking up from her notebook, her pencil moving slowly across a page that didn't really need any more details added to it. Selena noticed the torn corner on one of the pages, carefully taped back together with a strip of clear tape that had already started to peel slightly at the edges. "What happened here?" Selena asked gently, touching the torn spot with one finger. "It just ripped," Maya said. "Notebooks rip sometimes. Paper's not that strong." Selena studied her daughter's face, the way she used to study an opponent across the cage. Not to attack, but to understand, to figure out what was really going on underneath the surface. She saw something there, something small and scared, folded up tight like the corner of that torn page, hidden, but not quite hidden enough. "Maya, if something's wrong at school, you can tell me. I promise I won't be upset with you. I won't march down there and embarrass you. I just want to know what's going on in your world." "Nothing's wrong," Maya said, and she even managed a small smile, the kind of smile she had practiced in the bathroom mirror that morning, just in case anyone asked her how she was doing. "I like my new school. Ms. Reyes is really nice. Art class is fun." It was the fifth lie, and it was bigger than all the others, because it wasn't just one small fact hidden away. It was a whole story, built carefully to cover up a much harder, sadder one. Selena did not push harder that night. She remembered her own childhood, growing up tough in a tough neighborhood in California, and how much she had hated when adults pried at wounds before she was ready to show them on her own terms. She had learned, the hard way, that pushing too soon could make a kid clam up even tighter. So she decided to wait, to watch, to be ready the moment Maya was finally ready to talk. But as she turned off Maya's light and walked down the hallway, passing the framed photo of herself holding up her championship belt, a worry sat heavy in her chest. The same kind of worry she used to feel right before a big fight. The feeling that something significant was coming, something she could not yet see clearly, but something that was going to require everything she had once it finally arrived. In the kitchen, the light over the stove was the only one still on, casting long shadows across the counters. She found Tyler grabbing a glass of water before bed, his hair messy from a day of basketball. "Hey, has Maya said anything to you about school?" Selena asked. "Anything about kids or friends or anything like that?" Tyler shrugged, wiping his mouth. "Not really. She seems kind of quiet lately, but Maya's always been quiet. Quieter than usual, though?" Tyler thought about it for a second, his easy 12-year-old confidence fading slightly as he actually considered the question, instead of brushing it off. He set the glass down on the counter. I mean, yeah, maybe. She used to talk about her drawings at dinner all the time. That whole Pine Watch thing, the foxes and the queen and all that. She hasn't really done that in like 2 weeks. Selena filed that detail away carefully, the way she used to file away small details about opponents during fight week, little clues that didn't mean much on their own, but might matter a lot once she had enough of them lined up together. A missing drawing here, a quiet dinner there, a torn page covered in tape. None of it was proof of anything by itself, but together, it was starting to form a shape she didn't like. 2 weeks. That was exactly how long Maya had been going to Cedar Hollow Elementary. Selena didn't say anything else to Tyler that night, but she made a quiet decision as she climbed into bed, the house settling into its nighttime creaks and silences around her. She would start paying very, very close attention, and the next time something seemed off, she wasn't going to wait quite so patiently for Maya to bring it up on her own. The note appeared in Maya's backpack on a Friday afternoon, folded into a tiny square, the kind of fold that takes practice to get just right. She found it while packing up her things after the final bell, tucked between her math worksheet and her water bottle. The classroom was emptying out around her, chairs scraping, backpacks zipping, kids calling goodbye to each other across the room. For a brief, hopeful second, her heart lifted. A note. Maybe it was from a classmate. Maybe even, somehow, from Brooklyn. The start of something better. An apology. A chance to begin again. It was not nice. The handwriting was rushed and messy, clearly written in a hurry between classes, the letters slanting sharply to the right, like whoever wrote it had been in a rush to get it done before anyone noticed. It said that Maya was a fake, that her mom's fighting career was probably made up, that nobody at Cedar Hollow actually liked her, and that she should go back to wherever weird kids come from. And at the very bottom, in smaller, almost rushed handwriting, there was one more line, a line Maya would not be able to bring herself to repeat out loud for several more days. Maya read it 3 times at her desk, as if reading it again might somehow change the words on the page, might soften them into something less sharp. She did not cry at her desk. She had gotten good at holding things in over the past 3 weeks, the way someone gets good at holding their breath underwater the longer they practice. She held it together long enough to walk outside into the cool afternoon air, past the buses lined up at the curb and the crossing guard waving cars through, long enough to get picked up by her mom from the gym after school, long enough to walk through the front doors of Castillo Fighting Fitness, past the rows of punching bags and the smell of rubber mats, and head straight to the back of the building, behind the gym, where nobody could see her. That was when the crying finally came. All of it. 3 weeks of small cuts opening up at once, the way a wound that's been ignored for too long suddenly demands attention all at once, refusing to wait any longer to be noticed. That was the moment Selena found her, the very moment where this story began. "Maya, what happened?" Selena had asked, kneeling in front of her crying daughter on the cold gravel. "I don't want to say it," Maya had whispered. "If I say it, it'll be true." Now, finally, sitting against that cold brick wall with the evening light fading around them, Maya reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the crumpled note. She held it out without a word, because some things are easier to hand over than to say out loud. Selena unfolded it carefully, smoothing out the creases. She read it once, her eyes moving line by line, her jaw tightening with every sentence. Then she read it a second time, slower, as if she needed to be completely sure of what she was looking at. Her hands, normally so steady, gripped the paper a little tighter than they needed to. "Who wrote this?" she asked quietly, her voice steady but firm, the same voice she used to use right before stepping toward the center of the cage. Maya hesitated, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve, staring down at the gravel instead of meeting her mother's eyes. "Maya," Selena said gently, "you don't have to be scared to tell me. Whatever happens next, I'm not going to let anything bad come from this. I just need to know." Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, Maya said the name. Brooklyn Hayes. Selena nodded slowly, folding the note back up with careful, controlled hands, the same hands that had once thrown punches strong enough to end championship fights. She tucked it into her own pocket, taking a slow breath before speaking again, the way she used to breathe between rounds when she needed to keep her temper in check. "How long has this been happening?" Selena asked. "And I need you to tell me everything, baby. Not just this note. Not just today." Maya took a deep, shaky breath. The kind of breath you take right before you finally let go of something you've been carrying for far too long. "Since the first day," Maya said. "It's been since the very first day." The sun had almost fully disappeared behind the mountains now, the sky turning a soft purple gray. Inside the gym, someone had turned off the music, and the building had gone quiet, as if even the walls were listening. Selena pulled her daughter close, resting her chin gently on the top of Maya's head, the smell of the gym still clinging to her sweatshirt, comforting and familiar. "Okay," Selena said softly. "Okay, thank you for telling me. I know that wasn't easy." "Are you going to do something?" Maya asked, her voice small and uncertain, pulling back just enough to look up at her mother's face. "Yes," Selena said, "but not the way you might be imagining. I promise you that." Maya didn't fully understand what that meant yet, but for the first time in 3 weeks, the heavy feeling in her chest had eased, just slightly, just enough to breathe a little easier. The cold gravel underneath them no longer felt quite so cold, and the brick wall at her back no longer felt like a place to hide, but simply a place to sit, beside someone who finally knew the truth. She had finally said it out loud, and the world, it turned out, had not ended after all. Once the dam broke, the whole story came pouring out, the way water rushes through a crack once it finally finds a way through. Maya told her mother everything, the comments about her hoodie on that very first day, the jokes about Selena's career during lunch, the torn page in her notebook during art class, the lunches eaten alone by the recycling bins, the small bump on the playground that hadn't really been an accident, the 3 weeks of small cruelties that had piled up like stones until she could barely breathe under the weight of them. She talked faster than she usually did, the words tumbling out of her, almost faster than she could think them, like she had been holding a door shut for so long that once it finally opened, everything behind it came spilling out at once. Selena listened without interrupting, sitting on an overturned crate near the gym's back door, the way she used to listen to her old coach breaking down film of an opponent. Quiet, focused, missing nothing, letting every detail land before reacting to any of it. Every so often her jaw tightened, or her hands curled slightly into fists resting on her knees, but she never once looked away from Maya's face, and she never once said a word until Maya was finished. When Maya finished, she looked up at her mother with red, tired eyes, her cheeks streaked from crying. "Are you mad at me?" Maya asked. "Why would I be mad at you?" Selena said, startled, pulling back slightly to look directly at her daughter. "Because I didn't tell you. Because I let her say all that stuff, and I didn't fight back. Because I lied to you like 5 different times when you asked how school was going." Selena pulled Maya into a tight hug, the kind of hug that felt like it could hold the whole world together, the kind of hug Maya hadn't realized how badly she needed until it was happening. Out in the parking lot, a car door slammed somewhere, far off and ordinary, a reminder that the rest of the world was still turning, even though Maya's had just been split wide open. "Baby, listen to me," Selena said, her voice thick with emotion she was trying hard to keep steady. "Fighting back doesn't always mean throwing a punch. You know that better than almost any kid in this town, because you've grown up watching me train, watching me teach my students that real strength is about control, not about hurting people. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is keep being kind when someone is trying to make them mean. You did that for 3 weeks straight. That took real strength, Maya, more than most adults I know could manage." "It didn't feel like strength," Maya said. "It felt like being scared. Every single day. Sometimes those feel exactly the same at first," Selena said. "I used to feel that way before almost every fight of my career. My hands would shake. My stomach would hurt. I'd think about quitting right up until the second the bell rang, but I walked out there anyway, every single time, scared the whole way. That's not weakness. That's what courage actually looks like, most of the time. It rarely looks like what people think it looks like in movies." She wiped Maya's tears with her thumb, gently, the same way she used to comfort herself in locker rooms before a fight, breathing slow, thinking clear, finding calm in the middle of something hard. "What about the lying?" Maya asked. "I shouldn't have lied to you. You were scared and embarrassed, and you didn't know how to say something that felt that big out loud," Selena said. "I'm not happy you didn't tell me sooner. because I hate that you carried this alone. But I understand why it happened. And now that I know, we're not doing this alone anymore. Either of us. What are you going to do? Maya asked. I'm going to help, Selena said. But not the way you might think. Maya frowned, confused, sitting back slightly to study her mother's face, trying to picture what kind of help didn't involve marching into a classroom and demanding an apology in front of everyone. I'm not going in there to scare anybody, Selena said. I'm not going to march into that school and make Brooklyn Hayes cry in front of everyone, even though, believe me, a part of me really wants to. I'm going in there to fix something. There's a difference between those two things. And it's a difference I need you to understand, because one day, you might be the one fixing things too, for somebody else who's hurting. How do you fix someone being mean? Maya asked. Isn't that just who they are? Sometimes, Selena admitted, but more often, meanness comes from somewhere. It doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it okay. But understanding where it comes from is usually the only way to actually make it stop, instead of just making it quieter for a little while. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. I learned that the hard way, a long time before you were ever born. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are hurting just as badly themselves, even if it doesn't look that way from the outside. Maya didn't fully understand yet what her mother meant, but she trusted her, completely and without question, the same way she had trusted her every single day of her life, ever since she was small enough to be carried on Selena's shoulders at the grocery store. Will you tell me what happens? Maya asked. All of it? Even if it's not good news? Every bit of it, Selena promised. You've trusted me with the hardest part already. The rest is mine to handle now, and I'll bring you along every step of the way. On Monday morning, Selena Castillo walked into Cedar Hollow Elementary School, not in workout clothes, but in a plain blue sweater, calm and steady, carrying nothing but the folded note in her hand, and a clear sense of exactly what she wanted to accomplish. The hallways were quiet this early, just a few teachers setting up their rooms and the smell of the cafeteria starting to cook breakfast somewhere down the hall. Principal Patterson met her in the front office, a tall man with reading glasses pushed up onto his graying hair. Framed photos of past graduating classes lined the wall behind his desk, along with a faded school pennant and a small jar of pencils that looked like it had been refilled 1,000 times over the years. He had heard of Selena before, of course. Most of Cedar Hollow had, once people learned a retired UFC champion had moved to town and bought the old gym on Main Street. A few parents had even joked about it at school pickup, half impressed and half nervous about having a real fighter living among them. But he had never seen her look quite this serious. Mrs. Castillo, thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing toward a chair across from his desk. I understand there's been an issue with another student. There's been more than an issue, Selena said, setting the note carefully on his desk, the paper still slightly creased from being folded and unfolded so many times. There's been 3 weeks of it. My daughter didn't tell me because she was scared and embarrassed, which means there's probably even more I don't know about yet. Mr. Patterson read the note carefully, his expression darkening line by line, his eyes lingering longest on the final sentence near the bottom of the page, the one that seemed to bother him the most. I want to be clear about something, Selena said, leaning forward slightly. I'm not here to demand anyone get expelled or suspended for a week. I'm not here to make a scene, even though I fought professionally for 10 years, and I promise you, I know exactly how to make a scene if I wanted to. A small, surprised laugh escaped Mr. Patterson before he caught himself. I fought for 10 years, Selena continued, and you know what I actually learned? Deep down, underneath all the training and the titles? Real strength isn't about making someone else feel small. It's the complete opposite of that. So I'm not interested in making Brooklyn feel small either, even after reading this. I just want this handled the right way, for my daughter, and honestly, for that other girl too, because something is clearly going on with her if she's writing notes like this. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly, setting the note down, his fingers still resting on its edge, as if he wanted to read it one more time. We'll bring Brooklyn and her parents in for a meeting, and Maya's teacher, Ms. Reyes, has actually mentioned some concerns of her own this week, separate from this. She noticed Maya eating alone and seeming withdrawn. We were already planning to look into it before this note even came up. There's one more thing, Selena said. I'd like to talk to Brooklyn myself. Not to scare her, just to talk, with you and Ms. Reyes in the room the whole time, so nobody worries about what's being said. Mr. Patterson hesitated, tapping his pen against the desk, weighing the request carefully. That's a bit unusual, but given the circumstances, and given that you're approaching this so reasonably, I think we can arrange that. Brooklyn's mother is actually picking her up early today for an appointment, so the timing might work well, if you don't mind waiting a little while. I don't mind waiting, Selena said. I've waited 3 weeks already without even knowing it. An hour won't hurt. An hour later, after a quick phone call home, Brooklyn Hayes sat across a small round table in the counselor's office from Selena Castillo, looking far less confident than she had looked on any playground or any cafeteria bench. The room was small and soft-lit, with a box of tissues on the table and a poster about feelings on the wall that Brooklyn was clearly avoiding looking at. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, and she kept glancing toward the door, like part of her wanted to run. I'm not here to yell at you, Selena said gently, keeping her voice low and even. I just want to understand something, Brooklyn. Why Maya? Brooklyn's eyes dropped to the table. For a long moment, she didn't answer at all. Ms. Reyes shifted slightly in her chair near the door but didn't speak, letting the silence sit there, heavy and uncomfortable, the way important silences sometimes need to. Outside the small window, a maintenance cart rolled slowly down the hallway, the squeak of its wheels the only sound in the otherwise still room. I'm not going to be angry, Selena said again, softer this time. I promise. I just really want to know. Brooklyn's fingers twisted together in her lap. She opened her mouth once, then closed it again, as if the words she needed weren't quite ready to come out yet, the way a fighter sometimes hesitates right before throwing the first punch of a match, knowing that once it's thrown, there's no taking it back. The silence stretched long enough that Ms. Reyes almost stepped in to fill it. But Selena waited, hands folded calmly on the table, the same patient stillness she used to show in the final seconds before a round started, when the crowd noise faded into background hum, and all that mattered was watching closely. She had learned, in hundreds of hours of training fighters, that the most important answers usually came after the longest pauses, after a person finally ran out of ways to avoid the truth. Finally, Brooklyn spoke, her voice much smaller than it had ever sounded on the playground, smaller than anyone in that room had probably ever heard it before. My parents are getting divorced, she said, staring down at her hands, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. They told me 3 weeks ago, the exact same week Maya started at our school. Selena's expression softened immediately, but she stayed quiet, letting Brooklyn keep going at her own pace, not rushing her toward the next sentence. Everybody at home is mad all the time, Brooklyn continued, her voice cracking slightly. My mom cries in the bathroom and thinks I can't hear her. My dad moved into an apartment by the highway, and I only see him on Wednesdays and every other weekend now. Nobody talks to me about anything real anymore, except who's picking me up on which days, and whose house I'm sleeping at, and whether I packed enough clothes. Mr. Patterson and Ms. Reyes exchanged a quiet glance from across the room, but neither of them said anything, letting Brooklyn finish. And then this new girl came in, Brooklyn went on, and she had this whole happy family, with a mom and a brother who actually seemed to like each other, and her mom was famous, and she had this dumb hoodie with a wolf on it that her mom gave her for winning something, and she just seemed so... Brooklyn stopped, swallowing hard, her eyes filling with tears she clearly didn't want anyone to see. She just seemed so okay, and I wasn't okay. I'm still not okay. So I guess I wanted her to feel like I felt. Just a little bit. So I wouldn't feel so alone in it. She wiped at her eyes quickly with the back of her hand, embarrassed to be crying in front of Mr. Patterson and a famous fighter at the same time. That doesn't make it right, Selena said carefully, her voice gentle but firm, not letting the explanation slide into an excuse. What you did to Maya hurt her. Tearing her notebook, writing that note, those weren't small things, even if they felt small to you in the moment when you were doing them. I know, Brooklyn whispered, a tear finally slipping down her cheek. I knew it while I was doing it too. I felt bad almost right away, every single time. I just couldn't seem to stop myself. That happens sometimes, Selena said. Pain that doesn't have anywhere good to go ends up leaking out sideways onto people who didn't do anything to deserve it. I felt that myself, a long time ago, before I learned what to do with it instead. Brooklyn looked up, genuinely surprised. You felt like that? You're like a champion. You won fights in front of thousands of people. Champions aren't people who never hurt, Selena said, a small, tired smile crossing her face. We're just people who eventually found better places to put the hurt. When I was about your age, my own parents fought constantly, and I used to get in trouble at school all the time for things that had nothing to do with school at all. I broke a kid's crayons once, on purpose, for no reason, except that I was angry about something completely different happening at home. I had a coach later on, years later, who finally helped me understand that. I'd like to help you find a place for it too, if you're willing to let me. Brooklyn's eyes filled with fresh tears, and for the first time in 3 weeks, maybe for the first time in months, she did not look like the most powerful kid in 4th grade at all. She just looked like a 10-year-old who had been carrying something far too heavy, all by herself, for far too long, with nobody around who had noticed she needed help carrying it. What happens now? Brooklyn asked quietly. You're going to apologize to Maya, in your own words, when you're ready, Selena said. Not because someone is forcing you to say sorry, but because you actually mean it, and Mr. Patterson and Miss Reyes are going to help connect you with someone you can talk to regularly, someone whose whole job is helping kids carry hard things. That part isn't a punishment. That part is just support, the kind everybody deserves when their world gets hard. Mr. Patterson nodded in agreement. We already have a wonderful school counselor, Mrs. Okafor. I think it would help for you to start seeing her twice a week, just to talk. Brooklyn nodded slowly, wiping her face with her sleeve. Okay, she said. I can do that. It wasn't a complete fix. Not yet. Not in one single conversation. But it was a start. And sometimes a real start is the hardest and most important part of the whole journey. That evening, back at the gym, Maya sat with her mother on the same bench where it had all started, the cold brick wall behind them, the late afternoon sun stretching long orange shadows across the parking lot. The same dumpster sat a few feet away. The same stack of old tires leaned against the wall. But the silence between them felt different now, softer, safer, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has finally passed, instead of the kind that comes right before one. I have to tell you something, Maya said quietly, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. About the note. There's a part I didn't tell you yet. Selena turned to her, giving Maya her full and complete attention, setting aside the water bottle she'd been holding. She didn't rush her. She had learned, after 3 weeks of missing all the smaller signs, that the most important thing she could do now was simply wait and listen. At the bottom of the note, Maya said slowly, it didn't just say I should go back to wherever weird kids come from. It said, Maya's voice cracked, and she had to stop and take a breath before continuing, her eyes fixed on a crack in the pavement instead of on her mother's face. It said even my mom would probably get tired of me eventually. That everybody gets tired of weird kids in the end, even their own families. The words hung in the air between them, small and sharp, the way the worst things often are. Selena felt something tighten painfully in her chest, sharper than any punch she had ever taken in 10 years of professional fighting. This was the part Maya had been too afraid to say out loud, even behind the gym on that very first day. The real reason she had whispered, if I say it, it'll be true. Not the teasing about the hoodie, not the torn notebook page. It was the deep, quiet fear that maybe, somehow, it was true. That maybe even her own mother might one day get tired of all the things that made Maya different from other kids. Maya, look at me, Selena said, turning her daughter gently by the shoulders so they were face to face. I have never once, in 9 years, been tired of you. Not for a single second. Not on your hardest day, not on your worst day, not ever. The things that make you different. Your drawings, your stories, that whole incredible world of Pine Watch you built page by page in that notebook. Those aren't things I tolerate or put up with. Those are things I love. Those are some of my absolute favorite things in this entire world, Maya. I mean that with everything in me. She squeezed Maya's shoulders gently. If anything, I'm tired of myself sometimes, for not noticing sooner how much you were carrying alone. That's on me, not you. Even though I'm not tough like you? Maya asked, her voice still small and uncertain. You held 3 weeks of cruelty without ever once being cruel back, Selena said firmly. You kept drawing. You kept being kind, even when kindness wasn't being returned to you. That's tougher than anything I ever did inside a cage, and I mean that completely, not just as something nice to say. Maya finally let out a long, shaky breath, like she had been holding it in for 3 whole weeks without even realizing it. I believe you, she whispered. And for the first time since starting at Cedar Hollow Elementary, sitting there in the fading orange light behind her mother's gym, she actually, truly meant it. Selena pulled her into a hug, resting her cheek against the top of Maya's head, and they sat there together for a long while, not saying anything else. Because sometimes the most important moments don't need any more words once the right ones have finally been spoken. The sun kept sinking lower behind the mountains, turning the brick wall behind them from orange to a soft, dusty gray, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the cold didn't bother Maya at all. Spring came slowly to Cedar Hollow, the way it always does in the mountains, with one warm day followed by 2 cold ones, until eventually the warm days simply won out for good. The pine trees behind the gym had started growing soft new needles at their tips, and the gravel lot where Maya had once cried no longer felt like a place to hide. It had just become a regular part of the building, a quiet corner where she sometimes sat to draw when the gym was busy and loud inside. At school, things were different now. Brooklyn Hayes had started seeing the school counselor, Mrs. Okafor, twice a week, something only Maya, Miss Reyes, and Mr. Patterson knew about, and something nobody made a big deal out of in front of the other kids. The 2 girls weren't best friends, not exactly, and Maya didn't expect them to be. But one Thursday in art class, with the afternoon light falling across the tables the same way it always did, Brooklyn walked over to Maya's table during free draw time, looked at the newest page of Pine Watch, and said, quietly, I'm sorry about before. All of it. That world you made is actually really cool. Thank you, Maya said, and she meant it. Can I see the queen again? The one I tore? Maya turned to that page. The tape was still there, holding the torn corner carefully in place, a small reminder of a hard time that had eventually, slowly, healed. She's even better now, Brooklyn said, looking at the new details Maya had added. And for once, there was nothing sharp behind her words at all. Just plain, simple honesty. At home, Maya still wore her gray wolf hoodie most days, but now she also wore something new. A small wooden charm Selena had given her, shaped like a tiny shield, the kind some boxers and fighters sometimes wore for luck before a big match. Selena had found it at a small shop near the gym and known right away who it was for. It's not for fighting, Selena had told her, fastening it carefully onto Maya's backpack zipper, her fingers working the small clasp with the same care she once used wrapping her own hands before a fight. It's for remembering. You're allowed to be soft and still be strong. Those aren't opposites, baby. They never were, no matter what anyone tries to tell you. That evening, the whole family sat together on the back porch of their house, watching the sun go down behind the pine trees in slow streaks of orange and pink. Tyler dribbled his basketball lazily on the patio, the steady bounce echoing softly in the cool evening air, and somewhere nearby a porch light flickered on at a neighbor's house. Maya drew quietly in her notebook, adding a new chapter to the world of Pine Watch, a queen who had once felt very small, and had learned, slowly and patiently, that she never really was small at all. Selena watched her daughter draw, the pencil moving steady and sure across the page, and felt something settle deep and warm inside her own chest, steadier and more meaningful than any championship belt she had ever won in her entire career. Some fights, she thought, you don't win with your fists at all. You win them by staying soft enough to still believe in kindness, even after the world has tried hard to convince you not to. You win them by sitting quietly beside someone who is hurting, and waiting, and listening, until they finally feel safe enough to tell you the truth. And that, Selena knew with complete certainty, was the strongest thing her daughter would ever learn. Stronger than any lesson taught inside a gym, and one that would stay with Maya for the rest of her life. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach more people. Drop a comment, and tell us where you're watching from today. And if you believe kindness is worth spreading, click on the video on your screen right now to watch next.